Some people spend their whole lives searching for proof that kindness still exists in the world. Others discover it in a single moment that changes everything forever. On a cold autumn evening, a tired single father found a wallet lying on the sidewalk. Inside was more money than he had ever seen in his life. $40,000 in cash, along with credit cards, jewelry, and important documents, sat right in front of him. His daughter needed medicine. His rent was overdue. His refrigerator was almost empty. But what he decided to do next would change not only his life, but the life of the woman who had lost that wallet. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Stories like this remind us that even the smallest act of kindness can create ripples that reach farther than we could ever imagine. Daniel Carter adjusted the straps on his worn backpack as he walked home from work. The 42-year-old father had just finished another long shift as a maintenance worker at a large office building. Every muscle in his body ached. Life had not been easy for Daniel. 3 years earlier, his wife had passed away after a long illness. Since then, he had been raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, all by himself. Every day was a struggle. Daniel worked extra hours whenever he could, but the bills always seemed to grow faster than his paycheck. Still, he never complained. Every evening, no matter how tired he was, he came home with a smile for Lily. Together, they would eat dinner, do homework, and talk about their dreams. Lily wanted to become a doctor one day. Daniel told her she could become anything she wanted. That evening, Daniel took his usual route home through the city park. The sun was beginning to set, and orange light spread across the sky. As he passed a bench, something caught his eye. A dark leather wallet lay near the path. He bent down and picked it up. The moment he opened it, his eyes widened. Inside were stacks of cash. His hands began to shake. He counted quickly. $40,000. Daniel could hardly believe it. He looked around, but the park was nearly empty. There was no sign of the owner. For a moment, hundreds of thoughts raced through his mind. This money could pay his rent. It could buy Lily new clothes. It could cover her school expenses for years. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he remembered something his father had taught him when he was a boy. Your character is measured by what you do when nobody is watching. Daniel opened the wallet again and searched for identification. He found a driver's license belonging to a woman named Victoria Bennett. Her address was on the other side of the city. Daniel looked at the sky. It was getting dark, but he knew exactly what he had to do. An hour later, he stood in front of a large house surrounded by beautiful gardens. Expensive cars were parked in the driveway. He rang the doorbell. A woman in her 50s opened the door. Her face was pale, and her eyes were filled with worry. "Can I help you?" she asked. Daniel held out the wallet. "I think this belongs to you." The woman stared at him in disbelief. "My wallet," she cried. She quickly opened it and looked inside. Everything was there. The money. The cards. The jewelry. Tears filled her eyes. "You have no idea what this means," she whispered. "I was afraid it was gone forever." Daniel smiled. "I'm just glad I found you." Victoria looked at him with surprise. "You didn't take anything?" Daniel shook his head. "It wasn't mine." Victoria insisted that he accept a reward, but Daniel politely refused. "Thank you," he said. "That's enough for me." As he turned to leave, Victoria noticed the holes in his shoes and the worn jacket hanging from his shoulders. She watched him disappear into the darkness. Something about him stayed in her mind. The next morning, Victoria could not stop thinking about the man who had returned her wallet. She was the owner of a successful technology company. Over the years, she had met many wealthy and powerful people, but very few had shown the honesty Daniel had shown the night before. Curious, she decided to follow him. She found the office building where he worked and waited outside. When Daniel finished his shift, she quietly followed him. She expected him to spend money on himself. Instead, she watched him stop at a grocery store and carefully count the few dollars in his pocket. Then he bought bread, milk, eggs, and a small chocolate bar. Victoria continued following him. Daniel finally arrived at a tiny apartment building. From outside the window, Victoria saw something that brought tears to her eyes. Lily ran into her father's arms. Daniel handed her the chocolate bar. Her face lit up as though she had been given the greatest treasure in the world. The two of them sat together at the kitchen table, laughing and talking while Daniel helped her with her homework. The apartment was small. The furniture was old. But the room was filled with love. Victoria suddenly understood something important. The man who had returned $40,000 had almost nothing for himself. Yet he had still chosen honesty. The following day, Victoria knocked on Daniel's door. When he opened it, he looked surprised. "Mrs. Bennett?" She smiled. "May I come in?" Daniel invited her inside. Lily greeted her politely. Victoria looked around the apartment and realized just how difficult life had become for them. Then she turned toward Daniel. "Why did you return the wallet?" she asked. Daniel looked confused. "Because it was yours." "But you needed the money." Daniel smiled softly. "Need doesn't give us permission to take what belongs to someone else." Victoria was silent. Then Lily spoke. "My daddy says kindness costs nothing, but it can be worth everything." Victoria could no longer hold back her tears. Over the following weeks, she visited Daniel and Lily many times. She discovered that Daniel was not only hardworking and honest, but also incredibly skilled at repairing machines and solving problems. Little by little, the three of them became friends. Then one day, Victoria made an unexpected offer. She invited Daniel to work for her company. At first, Daniel refused. He had no experience working in an office. Victoria smiled. "I don't need someone with the perfect education. I need someone with the right heart." Daniel accepted the opportunity. Months passed. His life slowly began to change. He earned enough money to move into a better home. Lily finally had her own bedroom. Her school grades improved, and she started talking excitedly about becoming a doctor. But Victoria's kindness did not end there. She established a scholarship fund in Lily's name to help pay for her future education. Daniel was overwhelmed with gratitude. One evening, as they sat together sharing dinner, Victoria revealed a secret. "The day you returned my wallet," she said, "I was losing faith in people. I had spent years building my business, but I had begun to believe that everyone cared only about money." She looked at Daniel and smiled. "You reminded me that I was wrong." Daniel lowered his eyes. "I didn't do anything special." Victoria shook her head. "You changed everything." Years later, Daniel stood proudly in the front row as Lily graduated from medical school. Victoria sat beside him. When Lily walked across the stage, tears filled both their eyes. After the ceremony, Lily hugged them tightly. "You both taught me the most important lesson of all," she said. "And what lesson is that?" Victoria asked. Lily smiled. "That kindness has the power to change lives." The little girl who had once celebrated a simple chocolate bar had grown into a young woman ready to help others. As the sun set behind the campus, Daniel remembered the evening he had discovered a wallet on a lonely path. Back then, he had thought he was simply returning something that did not belong to him. He never imagined that a single decision would transform so many lives. The truth is that kindness often works that way. We rarely understand the importance of our actions in the moment. A helping hand, an honest choice, or a few caring words may seem small, but they can create a chain of events that reaches farther than we ever expect. Some people measure wealth by the amount of money they have. Others measure it by the number of lives they touch. Daniel may not have been rich when he found that wallet, but he possessed something far more valuable. He had integrity. He had compassion. And, in the end, those gifts became the greatest treasures of all. So, the next time life gives you the chance to choose kindness, remember Daniel's story. You never know whose life you might change. And perhaps, without realizing it, you might change your own life as well.